Here are 3 tips that will change your Call of Duty skill forever, starting with movement and ironing, then reading your opponents, and stay tuned for my last tip as it's my go-to that's guaranteed to make you become a better Call of Duty player. And as we get into today's video, if it helps at all, definitely let me know with a like or a subscribe, and I'll continue making these for Black Ops 6. So the first tip is movement and ironing. If you don't know what ironing is, all that it means is just holding your iron sights or holding your ADS. Instead of doing crazy movement or anything like that might throw your opponents off, it's kind of the opposite, just holding an ADS and either rounding a corner or staying perfectly still, waiting for your opponents to show up. Now, what we're going over today is not only knowing the difference between the two, but knowing when it's best to use movement to your advantage versus when it's best to iron or do that ironing that we've been talking about. So obviously, omni movement is super important for breaking cameras, slide canceling, diving out to challenge, and whatnot. But all of those come with a respective delay in your sprint to fire time, or in your slide to fire time, or in your dive to fire time. And you don't get that delay when you're already not moving and holding your ADS. And so the best way to find that balance is actually going to be situational awareness. Rewind P5 is one of my favorite examples of this, when it's most important to hold an iron. If you're holding the hardpoint in this corner and it gets contested, an opponent could be flanking you, could be coming from Zig, or could have crossed in the front door on the left side. If when it gets contested, your first instinct is to fully sprint and slide out looking for the gunfight, you might just catch the opponent mid-slide with their iron sight already up and ready to shoot. Instead, in a close range area like this one that doesn't have any head glitches or true cover to look over, the best play might just be to hold your ADS and choose where you think they might be coming from, rather than risking getting caught sprinting where you're unable to shoot at them at all. On the flip side, in P1 Rewind, let's say you're soaking time in this corner when an opponent contests from the other side. Not only is there a lot going on here, but you should keep in mind there's also a lot of cover that's at the same height of a slide. So it's more beneficial in this situation to slide out and challenge them, using movement and omni movement to your advantage, rather than simply ADSing and slowly rounding the corner. Finding the proper balance between when to use your movement and when to make sure you have your gun up is a lot more situational than just 2 hardpoint hills. 2 more aspects of Call of Duty that can determine whether you want to use movement or holding an iron could be information based or could be opponent based. Honestly, a doorway is a great example of this. If you get the information that somebody's holding this back heady here, you don't want to be holding an iron while you slowly creak the door, because they're already going to be shooting at you by the time you creak open the door. On the flip side, if you use your movement to get behind cover before standing up and challenging them, you're obviously putting yourself at a better situation with movement compared to simply ironing. And aside from information, this is also opponent based. If you're playing against a team or a player that you know is going to challenge or re-challenge, let's say you get somebody weak in launcher as they cross to the left side, some players might get weak and then lay down waiting for you to challenge them. Other players might get weak and then initially backwards slide to challenge you. So depending on what player you tag up, you might hold the iron and look for them if you're expecting a rechow, or you might just slide out and finish the kill if you're expecting them to be laying down playing a corner. And that actually brings us to our next point, which is to always be reading your opponents. And as a reminder, after this, we'll get to my #1 tip for improving in Call of Duty. But before then, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, you can get away with a lot more mistakes in a gold or platinum lobby versus an iridescent and top 250 lobbies. A lot more lanes will be open, a lot more people will get caught sprinting, and you won't be punished for not blocking spawns. And while it is important to play disciplined and correct Call of Duty all the time, you should know when it's time to play textbook Call of Duty versus when it's time to play a little more freely on the map. A great example of this is Hacienda P2. It's obviously very important that you rotate early and hold the back spawns. That way you can soak the hill and farm your opponents that are pushing front or anybody that's flanking through elbow. If that's not something that you're concerned about, you can obviously push further into the opponent's spawn, which you can also do if you have a teammate blocking the way back. But this is always something that's a little more tricky in Call of Duty because it's easy to turn your brain off and run forward to try to get more kills. The other examples from P3 to P4 on Rewind, these back spawns not only are super important, they're very easy to get flipped out of. So if you're playing against a disciplined team, you want to make sure you have somebody at this back truck or playing even further back to solidify those spawns. On the flip side, if you feel confident in your team to break this from the opposite side, you're very much then allowed to push up further into the opponent's spawn and taking challenges that might flip your team out. And if you're truly playing discipline, you can have somebody hard block while you push up a little bit further looking for the kills. Basically, the more respect that you have for your opponents will determine how you play, what corners you may or may not check, and how ready you're expecting your opponents to be when you're challenging certain angles. If you're trying to break P2 and your opponents are of lower rank, you might be able to get away with just fully sprinting at the hill. But if your opponents know how to play Call of Duty, they're going to be on top of that Lambo staring you down, and you'll want to find a way to sneak some shots onto them from some better positioning. And my final tip, and one that I always share when people are looking to improve in Call of Duty, is to isolate your deficits. There are many aspects of a great Call of Duty player. Movement, aim, and spawn knowledge are just a few. But if you're really looking to improve, find which of these you are the worst at and isolate it until you've improved in that area. For aim, hop in a bot lobby as often as you can and focus on shooting the bots at center mass, with an additional emphasis on not missing a single shot, even if it takes a while to line it up. The reason that we're doing this is because it's a bot lobby and you have absolutely nothing to lose. Even if you die or get taken out by a bot while lining up your shot, it's totally fine. Later, you can work on being snappy with your aim, but what you want to get down first is making sure that every single one of your shots hits once it's properly lined up. This could be hundreds of bots a day with multiple different weapons. The trick is getting the muscle memory down so once you're shooting at an opponent, you're not missing a single shot. If you're feeling extra shaky in terms of aim, you can go to your target aim assist and turn it off. Then still do that same drill of trying to make sure that you hit all your shots, landing them at center mass regardless of where your opponents might be, all while doing this without aim assist, which is admittedly a lot harder. Again, this is only if your aim is feeling super shaky, and I would do this for maybe like a couple hundred kills with the different weapons before turning it back on, which I'm going to do right now. For movement, hop in a bot lobby as well and build muscle memory for proactive movement like slide cancels and dives. Then work on your reactive movement like drop shots, long slides, and long sliding into drop shots. You want to be very comfortable with your movement in Black Ops 6, but if you have movement and no aim, you're obviously going to struggle. Likewise, if you have aim and no movement, you're also going to struggle in Black Ops 6. So with these two tips, isolate what needs the most work in your gameplay and try to hone in on that on a regularly consistent basis before you feel super comfortable with everything. And finally, for spawn knowledge, look into videos from pro Call of Duty coaches that go in depth on every map spawn points, especially for hardpoint. Since I can't go over every spawn point on every map, I would emphasize looking at each map in 4 quadrants, as that makes it much easier to predict the spawns. Control is a super easy game mode for spawns, so we'll use that for the quadrant example. If you're defending, which would be this side, and pretty much blocking these 2 quadrants. If you push up towards P2, which is over here, your opponents will pretty much only have to spawn in the remaining quadrant, which is up here on the top left. Again, control makes this super easy to predict because your opponents are only going to spawn on this side of the map anyways, but keep that in mind with hardpoint as well. If you're on P2 right here and your team is blocking this side, if you start pushing out this side of the map, it's very common that they'll spawn over here. Again, that's just very baseline spawn knowledge, and I would use each game and each spawn wave to practice your spawn predictions and try to improve them every game. And those are my top 3 tips to improve in Black Ops 6. Like and subscribe if this video helps you out, and I will catch you next time at lunchtime.